District Secretary Nancy Gamble Hatfield. It is Tuesday, February 19th, 2013, and this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Dublin San Ramon Services District Board of Directors. Presiding this evening is President Don Benson.
I'd like to join us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Roll call, please.
Director Hopkins.
Here.
Director Howard.
Here.
Director Duarte.
Here.
Vice President Bonfinger Leopold.
Here.
President Benson.
Here. Special announcements and activities.
Nothing on that item tonight.
Okay, public comment at this time. Any blue cards? No? Okay, moving on to reports.
Yes, President Benson and members of the board, I have a number of things for your calendars and information tonight. Let me start with the fact that on Tuesday, March 12th, which is the second Tuesday in March, I'd like to ask you to hold a special board meeting with a focus on strategic planning at the district, particularly on mission, vision, and values. I'd like to propose a 5 o'clock start time if that works for you. If it doesn't, 6 o'clock works fine, but it would be sort of a workshop setting just to sort of roll up our sleeves and work on those three elements of the plan. Before we get any further, we need the board's thoughts on mission, vision, and values. Let me know if that doesn't work. Let me put it that way. Okay. The next item I'd like to note is that there's a lunch meeting of the Contra Costa Council, a group called Innovation Tri-Valley in the Livermore Chamber of Commerce. It's being held in Pleasanton on February 22nd. Assemblywoman Joan Buchanan and John Chiang, State Controller, will be addressing the audience, talking about California fiscal picture, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I believe Director Bonfinger Leopold is attending. If other folks are interested in attending, let Nancy Hatfield know, and we'll try to coordinate reservations for you if that's possible. Next item is, as well, I was going to say as early as March 5th, but now I understand from the email very late in the day that on March 5th at 6 o'clock, which happens to be the time of your board meeting, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors Committee on Transportation and Planning will be holding a public meeting to talk about separation of Zone 7 from Alameda County. The meeting will be held at the Alameda County Public Works Administration offices in Dublin. Again, March 5th, 6 o'clock p.m. I'm not sure how we're going to pull that off. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go in the future. Gleason Drive Complex. I believe that's where it is, Gleason Drive Complex. Next item is Zone 7, the minutes from the Zone 7 DSRSD Pleasanton and Livermore Joint Liaison Committee meeting from a few weeks ago have been completed. They're on the dais. They're also posted on the website. As you know, sometimes those minutes take a little longer to prepare for the number of agencies that are involved, so you have them now. The next thing I'd note is that the Green and White Gala, sponsored by the Dublin Sister City Association, will be held on Friday, March 15th at the Dublin Senior Center. The cost is $60 per person. While the district no longer picks up the cost of that attendance, Nancy would be glad to coordinate your reservation so that perhaps we could get a table together if that's something you'd like to do. We need your information or your actual money and your indication that you're willing to go no later than Friday, March 1st to allow her to make those reservations. Earlier the better so we can get them in. That tends to be a hot ticket here in town. The last thing I would note under event calendar is I will be on vacation for your next regular board meeting. I'll be out of state from March 4th to March 8th. Dave Rico will also be traveling in district business at that time, so I've asked Ann Gallagher to be acting general manager that week and conduct the board meeting on our behalf at that time. Moving into correspondence to and from the board, you have in front of you an email of February 18th to President Benson and Director Howard from Paul Douglas, who's the Business Development Manager for Siemens Industry Incorporated regarding optimization of revenue for your proposed water rate increase at DSRSD. It's related to item, I'm not sure exactly which item you intended to address, but it's, in my estimation, it's related to both items 9A and 9D, where we'll be talking about on it. And lastly, very late in the day, we received a letter today, February 19th, addressed to President Benson from Dave Suico, I apologize if I mispronounced that, Chappelle Industries, regarding reinstatement of expanded capacity rights. That letter is also before you, and it's related to item 9C on tonight's agenda. And I believe that's all I have. Thank you for listening to my mouth.
Okay. Approval of the minutes. Oh, wait a minute. Reports, committee reports and agenda management.
President Benson, one more thing came in, and Alameda County Special Districts Association is having their annual dinner meeting Thursday, March 28th at the Pleasanton Marriott in Pleasanton on Dublin Canyon Road. The cost for that is $49 if we get our reservations in before March 1st, $59 after that date. So if you'd let Nancy know your pleasure in attending, that will coordinate that. That is a district paid for board members. Guests you pay for yourself.
Okay, excellent.
I'm sorry.
Agenda management. Okay, we'll move on to approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Consent calendar. Do I hear a motion?
I move for approval of items 8A through 80.
That's so good. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to our discussion proposed changes to water rates and charges.
President Benson, board members, this item before you is place the opportunity for directors to receive comments and ask any questions from the public at large that may be at this meeting. There is no formal presentation planned.
The staff is also here to answer any questions you might have had after receiving the water rate study from a consultant last week. I know it's a complicated study and rather involved, so if any questions popped up at you, we'd be glad to hear those, try to answer those. If we can't, we'll certainly get the information back to you.
Yeah, is there anybody in the audience that would like to address us at this time? We'd also like to remind the viewing audience that there's a lot of information about the proposed changes to the water rates and charges on our website, www.dsrsd.com. This is an opportunity. This is the first of 4 meetings where we're really inviting public comments, so we would really like to hear what you have to say and your thoughts. I'd also like to remind the viewing audience that this is that the next 3 regularly scheduled board meetings are March 5th, March 19th, and April 2nd. All meetings start at 6 p.m. here at the DSRSD offices at 7051 Dublin Boulevard. Okay.
If I could add one more comment to that, the Proposition 218 notices are scheduled to be printed and mailed this week, so our customers should receive those generally Friday, Saturday, perhaps Monday at the latest. And in the event we're still, that's per the schedule that we originally set for ourselves, and that'll maintain the schedule for the board to formally consider the water rates at your meeting on April 16th.
Okay. Okay, I guess we can move on. Next item is agenda item 9B, presentation of the Dublin Crossing project, aka Camp Parks Exchange.
President Benson, our Biaki is here to introduce our guest.
Good evening, President Benson and members of the board. At the last meeting, the board approved the planning agreement for DSRSD and the developer for the Dublin Crossing project. The City of Dublin, in coordination with the Army, is the leading agency for that. And I've been working with Christy Bascom, who will be providing me a presentation of that meeting. She wasn't able to attend last week's meeting because they were doing a planning review for that project. So here she is.
Thank you, Redora. President Benson, members of the board, I'll just give a very brief presentation on what is a fairly complicated, certainly for the City of Dublin, a pretty large project in terms of size and scope. But it's the Dublin Crossing project. Is it? Sorry, technology. I know how to work this stuff in the City Council chambers, but here it's a little different. So the project area is about 190 acres total, give or take. And I'm sure you're very familiar with it, primarily to the west of the Aaronhurst Trail on the north side of Dublin Boulevard and the west side of Arnold Road. This exhibit actually doesn't include the little triangle at the corner, which is owned by Alameda County Surplus Property Authority, but that's also incorporated within the overall project site. Just a very brief background on the project in terms of the city's involvement. It started in 2003 when the Army first approached the City of Dublin and asked for a general plan amendment study to be initiated. The property currently has no entitlements or was never envisioned to be developed for private uses. That started in 2003 when the Army requested the study and the city initiated that. Over the next several years, kind of ongoing discussions, many of the DSRSD board members that were sitting in your chairs at the time actually came to a planning charrette that the city put on when we were just beginning to conceptualize what might be possible on the property. And so there was discussions regarding the future of the project site. In December of 2007, the Army issued an official solicitation for a master developer, and SunCal Companies was selected by the Army. In April of 2011, an exchange agreement between the U.S. Army and SunCal was initiated and signed, and SunCal then began kind of the development review process with the city, which started out just as coming in and talking about what their thoughts were. That agreement is between the Army and SunCal only. The city is just participating, obviously, as the land use permitting authority and as the lead agency for the environmental review. So in terms of some project details, the existing general plan land use designation is public lands, and the existing zoning is agriculture. So for this property to be developed with anything other than an Army base, it needs every entitlement that you could possibly imagine. General plan amendment is what they're currently looking or seeking at this point, and then the subsequent entitlements are a new specific plan, a development agreement, rezoning, subdivision maps, and site development review. So overall, the applicant is looking to get approval for a residential, primarily residential, but a mixed-use project with up to nearly 2,000 single-family and multifamily residential units and up to 200,000 square feet of commercial uses, be it retail or office. A community park and at least 5 acres of neighborhood parks, and as well as they have a provision on their concept land use plan for an elementary school site, and that size varies depending on the version of the site plan you're looking at. This is the conceptual land plan, which I emphasize conceptual. We're going through the development, the review with the applicant at this point in developing a specific plan. But this is, in general, kind of how things are shaping up to be. So there's the community park over on the left-hand side between Scarlet Drive and the Aaronhurst Trail, Dublin Boulevard to the south. The light blue is the school site, neighborhood park they're showing adjacent to that, and another neighborhood park further towards the east on the site, primarily commercial along Arnold Road. And then the rest of the project site is residential, ranging from a low of, I think, about 8 units to the acre, which is a medium-sized lot, single family, up to, at this point, about 35 units to the acre along Dublin Boulevard, which is a 3 or 4 story apartments, or can be 3 or 4 story apartments. Again, this is just the current concept, which is still being developed with the applicant, and I'm sure we'll go through a few more iterations before it really starts to gel. One of the unique things about this project is the phasing in which it's being developed. Typically, when we look at a development project, the the method in which the development of the residential and commercial will come online is fairly logical and follows a more uniform pattern. This is a unique project because of the exchange agreement between SunCal and the Army, which we're not a party to, nor do we really know what it entails, but in terms of how the project will roll out, you can see the project site is carved up into a number of different kind of puzzle pieces that correspond to the different phases in which the SunCal is receiving the land from the Army. So phase 1 is this bordered by the red down here, adjacent to Dublin Boulevard. So that's the first chunk they get, and they'll build on that. And then phase 2, which is over to the left of that, they're all oddly configured because the way in which they get SunCal is receiving the phases and the size of each phase corresponds directly to facilities that SunCal is building on the Army base in exchange for getting that land. So I cannot explain this or explain why it looks this way exactly. SunCal has a very lengthy and detailed explanation, but needless to say, it will be a unique process in terms of how the development is going to come online over the probably 10 to 12 years that it takes from the beginning of phase 1 through the end of phase 5. And in terms of the project status, I'll just wrap up by explaining that the environmental review began in June of 2012 when we issued the notice of preparation for the environmental impact report. The city is the lead agency. The development of the project, again, phased over time, and at the earliest would start in March of 2014. The conceptual land use plan is still evolving, and in terms of next steps, the draft specific plan and draft environmental impact report could be released for public review within the next couple. And as I'm thinking more about DSRSD's role in the water service analysis, I'm realizing it's not the next couple of months, probably the next 3 months before we have a draft EIR that's ready to go. DSRSD staff has been great to work with. They've been reviewing administrative drafts of documents as they've come out and been providing some great feedback and very helpful, very engaged with the applicant, which has been wonderful. The water service analysis will be getting underway, and that will be integrated into the environmental impact report. Again, that will be released later this spring. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that I know the answer to. I'll certainly try and find it out for you.
Can I ask you one to go back to the map, the
Sure.
phasing map?
This one or the lantern?
No, the one with the first one that you gave. No. Phasing.
The phase.
Phasing map.
On there, do you know, perhaps my staff knows, where our preparation yard is?
Yes, we do. It's right above phase 4 in purple.
Right above phase 4.
Yeah, phase 4.
Oh, that's right, it's a triangular sort of
Yeah.
trapezoidal piece of property. Right.
That's why.
So once this process moves forward, we'll have to get more serious than we have. It becomes real of moving our corp yard to either the Gleason Avenue property, the treatment plant, or there's still a possibility of finding an alternative location for it on the base, but we'll have to get serious about those plans here pretty quick as they start breaking ground. So beyond the land use and the water, we have a facility interest in that project as well.
Right on the triangle that belongs to Alameda County. Down in the right-hand corner.
Surplus property.
Christy, do you happen to know if that, right above phase 5, if that's what's been completed so far by SunCal for the Army, all those residences?
Actually, those have been in place, and I'm going to be guessing, but I think it's been 4 or 5 years. From what I understand, and again, I have a very limited knowledge of SunCal's arrangement with the Army, but I do know that they have not started their first project on base yet. What they're doing, SunCal's first project on base will be to relocate the main gate for Camp Parks over to Doherty Road, and I know they are breaking ground on that, I think, next month. So what they'll do is build a new main gate, and then they get phase 1. Then they'll build another new facility, and then they get phase 2. So the residential neighborhood that's there has actually been there for a little while, and then SunCal will start their project next month.
Now for us, this is infill. Do we need new tank reservoirs for this, or you think
That's
we're
what
okay?
The answer to that is yes, we have a new Zone 1 reservoir planned in the future. So at some point down the road, we do need additional reservoir capacity, not immediately with the reservoir we received from Camp Parks with the privatization. But 10 years down the road, as this infills, let to add some more fire storage.
I have no other questions. Yeah, it's interesting project. I mean, you could have like 5,000 new people there. Like you said.
Yeah.
Well, I believe Camp Parks is one of the few military bases that has been scheduled 10 years back for expansion as opposed to cutting back and closure of so many other bases.
They do, and that is certainly what they're benefiting out of this project is the development of several brand new facilities on base. I understand it's a very active reserve facility.
Yeah, most of those facilities that have been completed recently, barracks and admin buildings, et cetera, have all been administered by the Corps of Engineers as
Right.
separately taken care of.
Roger. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Thanks, Christy. Okay, so next on the agenda will be the disposition of the request from Charter Properties to reinstate expired capacity rights for Charter Properties in Chappelle Homes.
Yes, President Benson, if I could make a couple of comments just to set the stage for the matter. It's actually the matter before you is really a reconsideration of a late 2012 request from Charter Properties to reinstate expired capacity rights. The difference between that request and now is, I think, threefold. Charter has now offered $1,500 rather than $1,000 per equivalent year to do so, to reinstate those rights. They're now asking for, this was a little unclear in the 2012 request, but I think a significant difference is the capacity rights that were extended by others that participated in the program run through December 31st of this year, 2013. Charter Properties is asking to extend their capacity rights through December 31st of 2014. And this capacity request also includes Chappelle. In 2012, it was limited to Charter Properties. Chappelle is the other property owner who has expired capacity rates that expired during the recession. The other thing that you should be aware of is we've gotten, staff has received a correspondence from Discovery Homes noting that many of their capacity rates will be expiring at the end of 2013, and their question is, what is the district's plan for those capacity rates given the consideration of this matter tonight? I'd call your attention to Table 1 in the staff report, which identifies the disposition of the capacity rates that existed prior to the last connection fee increase, how many were expanded, how many expired, and now, as we sit here in 2013, of those that were extended, how many are actually in the ground, how many are our best guess that may be put in the ground in the remainder of 2013, and how many, therefore, are subject to expiring again at the end of 2013. That's just FYI for you. So with that, the matter was really put on the board agenda in accordance with board guidelines, since it was really decided policy last September by President Dawn Benson for discussion and possible direction to staff.
Okay, so I guess we're going to reopen this, and I just wanted to finally put this one to the board, the full board. Do we have any?
Well, yeah, I have a question. You lost me a little bit. So there's 2 developers, or 3?
No, there's 2 developers that are subject to this particular request, Charter Property and Chappelle Homes. We received it, but there are a series of other developers who extended the capacity rights back in 2011, whose capacity rights may expire at the end of 2013 if they don't get those meters in the ground. One of those developers, Discovery Homes, who's basically Schaefer Ranch on the west side, contacted staff today and basically asked the question, well, what about them? And,
I get you.
And how many do they have?
I don't know, perhaps Redora does, I don't know how many.
I don't have Chappelle's number, but there are 363 units that are due to expire in December that may need to be extended. So you may
And-
expect requests from
And you said Chappelle's number. We do have Chappelle's number. It's 19
Right,
and
it's
a half.
Discovery.
Or we don't have Discovery Homes number right there. You could get that for us, but we don't have it.
What there could be is
But total,
as many as 300 and some that would end in December.
December 31st of 2015, based on our best estimate. Contacting the developers that hold those roads, et
Some
cetera.
of those obviously go in the ground, but we don't know that.
Well, the 363, there's actually 688 that were extended, 122 connected. We estimate 203 would go in the ground, leaving 363.
so about 363 total?
Yeah.
So let's see, the way the resolution is written.
Well, we have this set up for you tonight to give us conceptual direction, not knowing what the pleasure of the board was. We didn't know how to write a resolution to move ahead with this. So we need your conceptual direction, and then we'll return with we'll draft it in consultation with legal counsel to address the direction the board may give us on this. So we're looking for just direction by, conceptual direction by motion. Either approval of charter properties, denial of their request, or something of the board's choosing in between. That would be direction.
So my question is that when there was just, they missed the deadline by, they had been going ahead and extending their fees. They just missed that last deadline, is that correct?
The last, they
The
did not,
last deadline was in December?
yeah, they did not pay
2009.
fees on the last the remaining 7 DUEs. They actually had 12 that were outstanding in the 2011 timeframe, and in December of that year paid to extend only 5 of those, did not extend the remaining 7. And those now 7 that were not extended are not subject to this request.
Right.
So I make a suggestion.
Sure.
Perhaps you may want to solicit input from public speakers first, and then Mr. Hashim's
That sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, so do we have a blue card? Okay. Mr. Tom.
Good evening, President Benson, members of the board. My name is James Tom, I represent Charter Property. And I think this matter was in front of you back in September last year, and it wasn't being voted on. Now we're coming back. We've been working with the staff, and thanks for the staff. It's been very, very good to work with. So the matter is coming in front of you. Is basically we have 7 lots, and I remember the last discussion that we had during the hearing that Chappelle wasn't here, and nobody knows what's Chappelle's intentions are. So this time we took the liberty of contacting Chappelle. I think Dave was here, right? Yeah, Dave Sucre from Chappelle was present here. So they are in agreement that they would like to join the same program by extending the expired allocation. I think Chappelle's 19 DUE approximately, and Charter Property has 7. So we're offering now basically a secondary payment, like the staff was saying, $1,500 per unit, and to be expired in 2014. And I think the Discovery one on Schaefer Ranch wasn't expiring in 2013, so it wasn't really I was thinking it would be a separate matter when the time comes. I'm sure they would like to ask for an extension. But I'm just making some assumptions. So all I'm saying is that I would really like to resolve this matter in this session. I really appreciate it, that would like to urge the board to approve this extension by paying the $1,500 per DUE. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay. One question is that once these were expired, then you would have to go and buy another, since they're expired, you'd have to rebuy the whole connection fee again, is that correct?
No, the extension will be exempt for buying the connection fee. The extension will be only paying $1,500 per dwelling minutes.
Right, but I mean, I'm saying that right now, as they are, you would have to repurchase the whole thing if they were not extended.
Right, if the board didn't approve it, then you have to pay the fee all over again. It's a question of, I think your staff reports about $172,000 total for the 7 units.
Okay, and you bought those in 2007, correct? And you've been extending them all along, with the exception of December?
We bought it, I believe, not in 7, I think it was what, 3 years ago. But do you remember what time we paid for the 7 units?
July 23rd, I believe, 2007.
Yeah, it's in July 23rd, 2007.
Okay. And you've been extending them all along, with the exception you got 5 last year that you paid. They haven't extended them?
No, when the capacity rates are purchased, they have a 3-year lifetime to prevent speculation and ensure that people are paying the net market rate when they connect, so they don't use them for investment purposes.
Right.
As we've explained, those capacity rates, if you do the math on those that were purchased in 2007, actually were expired at the time the board considered your 2011 connection fee increase. The board, in recognition of the downturn, reinstated all of the expired DUEs for all developers across the district, giving those in a lifetime of basically 8 months through the end of 2011 that could then be further extended for another 2 years, I guess, through the end of 2013 for a payment of $1,000 at that time. At that time, once they were reinstated in June of 2011, Charter Properties had 12 that were reinstated. In December, they paid the $1,000 for 5 of those, and left. So 5 of them were extended. 7 of them were not extended.
So 5 were paid for in December, by December 31st, 2011?
They were paid for in December 20-something, 2011. They were paid for on 12/15.
12/15 or 12/14, you said?
12/15/2011.
Okay. So at that time, you only got 5, but not the 7.
Well, the reason the 5, we sold 5 lots of the DR Horton, so DR Horton they paid for them. And the other 7, like I said, explained to you, members last time, was somehow we either forgot or somehow screwed it up and didn't remember to pay for it. That's absolutely our mistake.
Actually, on that point, we have, and you have copies of this, our staff spoke with Mr. Dave Chadbourne, who's with McKay & Sons, their engineers, on December 12th, reminding them of this program, and then on December 15th, there was payment for the 5 units that were received at that time, not the 7. Why only 5, I don't know.
The contact was McKay & Sons?
Their engineer, yeah, was Mr. Dave Chadbourne.
I don't remember, Dave has left. That time Dave was no longer with McKay & Sons. That's why I'm saying there's some kind of...
The phone notes say Dave Chadbourne and Debbie on 12/13/11.
Yeah, he's no longer, he hasn't been with McKay & Sons since, I believe.
Okay, well, it says Dave and Debbie.
So whatever, I mean, there is some kind of misunderstanding, so we did it.
When did you have the buyer for 5?
The outlet.
And when?
That was, I believe it's 2010, January.
So they didn't buy it?
They bought the lots to build the houses, so they paid for the extension and finished.
In December of 2011?
You
had the buyer in place before the end of 2009?
Yeah, before. The escrow closed was sometime in January 2010. So when they get the site design review approved from the city, starting their construction, building plan drawings, so they pay for the extension in December 2010.
Those were paid for in 2011, I thought.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Okay. Okay. So at the point of 7, you just did 5 and not 7, but there's no, I guess I'm trying to figure out why the 7 were omitted.
Well, since we sold the 5 and the horse has been processing that, so it's my mistake that we forget about the 7 to pay extension fees. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, do we have any other speakers?
If these fees were all paid up front, and looking at the chart, we're looking at 233,000 that was paid.
President Benson, members of the board. My name is Dave Sweet. I work for Chappelle Homes. And at the time of the extension, the first extension, we went in, I think for door, Dave might know the exact number, but somewhere over 150, maybe 170 extensions we did pay for. These ones we were considering tonight, at that time, we did not believe, given that development at the time, at least the atmosphere of the development at the time, that we would, even the 2 years extension would allow us to build on these lots. However, recent upturn, we would like to consider it because we do believe by the end of the extension if the extension is made to December 31st of 2014, we would be able to use these water pumps. So that it was a conscious decision on our part to allow these to expire. And if it is consideration of the board to allow this extension, we would like to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Questions?
You asking me a question?
Mr. Duarte, Director Duarte.
So we've collected this money, but we provided no service, correct?
We collected this money in accordance with district code. The
Yes.
capacity fees expired, so they have never been utilized. That's correct.
And
The amount is 122. If you look at the table, just to hone you in on the
Right.
numbers, it's kind of a complicated table. It's the second row down, amount previously paid. Water and wastewater in the case of charter properties, total is 122,857. Water only in the case of Chappelle, they're in Doherty Valley where we don't provide any sewage service, so it's water only, 110,200.
And being new to the board, and this is kind of a new experience for me, but I guess I have at the risk of being simplistic, I have somewhat of a problem in that we're collecting these kinds of monies, which are significant. And then by virtue of the policy in place that the 3-year expiration term is in place so that there's no speculation on the part of the developer that they wouldn't have to pay the increased amount at a later date. But still, it keeps coming back to the fact that we're taking in a lot of money and then not providing anything. It's, I guess, coming from the private sector, I have a problem with that. I understand that because of the policy being in place to have a specific expiration term, but by the same token, having a policy that allows them to pay a penalty, a fine, a late fee, if you will, to extend those rights. If I were a developer, and I'm not, I certainly would be doing my best to make sure those rights were indeed renewed. But I don't know. It just doesn't feel right to me that for $250,000 plus or minus, we're not going to allow them to. We're not going to provide service.
Well, I think this is a policy matter for the board. Basically the board, it's in the district code that the capacity rights expire. We had a program to prevent that forfeiture and extend those fees at no additional cost. Mind you, the connection fees had gone up substantially during that period of time. To extend at no additional cost. So basically it's a matter of policy for the board. I would also note that it's not like the district profited from this because we have water debt, as you're very familiar, that debt payments that were made, facilities were built in anticipation of this. So it's not like this money is sitting around. It was actually used, for facilities.
Right, no, I didn't think that.
Regine?
Yeah, that's something I just wanted to point out, is that the labeling of these is somewhat misleading because now we call them capacity rights. They used to be called connection fees. The reality is they're buying part of the capacity that we paid $50 million or so to build already. And unfortunately, that's why the connection fees are so high, because we didn't build it right size 50 or 40 years ago. But my other point was, I understand why the policy was put in place to start with. This was a new area, and everybody was deathly afraid of somebody going out and buying 100,000 connection fees and pocketing them, being able to resell them or all the other things. I mean, we've got things in place so they can't do that. But the time was so incredibly different. And that's why that's part of the code, is that they were going to expire. We didn't want anybody speculating. But what we've come to in 2008 or 9, or whenever it particularly hit you, is the fact that everything's topsy-turvy now. We encourage them to be doing what they're doing because they're bringing jobs, they're bringing revenue into the valley. So I just don't feel like we should penalize them. I know there was a very valid reason back in 1990 or whenever it was done to put that limit in, but I just don't think it applies anymore. And I think we need to do whatever we can, and it doesn't matter what their reason was at the time. We just need to do whatever we can to allow them with some fee so that we replace all of the time it's taken to do this right now, for instance, so that they can reinstate those connection fees. I don't think we should lose them. We need to work hand in hand with them if we're going to get half of our economy back in terms of construction. I just don't feel we have no need to make a profit on any of this. The connection fee theoretically is set up to pay for the portion of the pipe they are buying. And I just think we ought to quit messing around with this and allow them to extend these due to the unforeseen circumstances of our economy.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I agree with most of what you're saying. I don't want to see a change in policy per se, because in the future when things are rosy again, if they ever are, because they will be, we don't want to turn connections into a commodity. So we need to keep a policy that prevents that. But in these unusual times, I think extending these is a good idea. And I think the end of 2014 is a good idea for these two particular properties. And so I would be in favor of doing that. Now my question comes up is, okay, now what about the folks that said these 330 outstanding properties where they said, hey, what about us? What about 2014 for us? And so now I'm a little bit uncertain about what to do about that. Page that was on.
It was attachment A. It was right behind this table.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm kind of a little bit concerned about what do we do about those.
What do you mean the new policy that says when your capacity rights expire, whenever they expire, you can extend them for 3 years for $2,000 or something like that, and then it'll kick in according to Redora's calendar. It won't need to come back to us because it'll kick in when those particular capacity rights expire.
And I understand you're talking sort of high level. You're saying policy. Understand that this provision is hard coded into a district code, so it would take a code revision, an ordinance to make this change. Of the programmatic nature you're talking about.
So I don't know, I'm in favor of the 12 or whatever it is we're talking about total. I'm not quite sure what to do with the 363 and a half.
Really, the matter is that the 363 is for your information. The matter before you for action is agendized is the charter properties and Chappelle ones. But we wanted to make sure you understand there's a bigger picture issue.
But that bigger picture is going to come back to us, I suspect.
The bigger picture is going to come back, and at some point in time, we're going to have to deal with it when staff brings it up because a developer approached them, or it's January 1st, 2015. But one way or another, we are going to have to deal with it in the future. Who knows, maybe they'll all be built by then.
But we have 7 from Charter Properties tonight and 19 from Chappelle, so that's on the table right now.
19 and a half.
19 and a half. And then we also have, a separate issue is that the expiration of all of the 363, which is 12/31/13. So, but tonight,
That's not our agenda.
sorry, Rich, go ahead.
We're not really agenda's that. I mean, yeah, we can gumby a little discussion of it in the agenda, but
Right.
be careful there.
But tonight is the 7 and 19 and a half.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so having been on the other side of the table during the negotiations of this program, I think you were the future king. I just want to remind everybody what happened, at least from this board member's perspective. It was time, we hadn't revisited connection fees in probably 5 years. It was time to do it. The math penciled out there was going to be a significant increase. And the math was real. You know, we did the study twice actually, and worked hand in hand with the development community. We would literally have committee meetings with us and 10, 12 people who've never experienced that. It's actually fun. Got to know Bob Glitter pretty well, and I think got along pretty good at the end. As part of that discussion, we were right in the nastiest part of the recession, and so we developed this program to extend the capacity rights on the books past what we hope to be the worst part of the recession. And just doing some quick math, because I'm the accounting geek, it was a very generous program, I think. I mean, you know, when you offer $1,000 to extend, if you offer, you know, for example, $7,000 to extend $122,000 worth of value, you know, I would, for 2.5 years, I would take that option any time. So we had 96.7% adoption, wildly successful. 712 lots available, 688.5 were extended, which means we probably underpriced the extension, but I'm willing to live with that. 2 entities did not extend, one of which I must commend Chappelle, because their letter is quite honest. And they flat out said, we didn't have a business reason to extend these at this time, so we thought it'd be better to have $19,500 of cash in our pocket instead of giving it to DSRSD to extend. By the way, now we do have a business reason, so 14 months later, we'd like to true it up. I think if we do this, we run the risk of losing credibility in the future anytime we put a program that has dates involved with it. We worked with the community, we built a program, obviously priced it very well because we had 96.7% adoption. And then after the fact, because business reasons change, we're asked to extend the deadline for no reason, or at least no reason from the district's perspective. Just my thoughts. As far as the expiration of capacity fees, that's well settled in the district code. Georgine outlined it very well, why it's there. Capacity fees, they increase through time, and in theory, in normal markets, the value of the property with which the entitlements reside increase through time. The last thing that an entity like us wants to have is capacity-free arbitrage. To put it in perspective, I will pay any of you $50 right now for the right to buy Apple stock from you at today's price forever. You know, options, to me, capacity fees are almost like an option, right? You pay your thing, we build the infrastructure around your property, you hook up, you make a lot of money, and we're all happy. But it just doesn't make sense from a financial and community aspect to have it be an option forever. I'm just afraid we're on a slope to make these capacity fees be options forever. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other discussion?
Well, let's see, I'll just looking at, okay, 9C asks for a motion. And concerns only the 2 property owners that we're talking about, not the other 300. And I'm concerned about the 2013 going to 2014 for everybody. So I'm kind of thinking along the lines of ending all of this at the end of 2013. And if the builders can take advantage of that, good. If they can't, they don't have to pay the fee, they can let it slide.
Would you want the 1,500 or the original 1,000?
1,500 because it's, it's one staff time. So, I guess I'm making the motion that we extend the property, the rights for the 2 developers here tonight until the end of 2013.
Second.
I hear a second.
And at $1,500.
At $1,500.
Yeah.
That will
Any
make
discussion?
all of them expire at the end of this year.
Correct. Yeah, would be my motion.
So that would be no extensions, or would?
That would be extension for
All
basically
we talk about is these 2 parcels.
These
two
These 2
parcels.
developments.
these 2 developers until the end of this year.
And then all the rest of them expire also.
That can't be part of
Yes,
this.
that's-
I know, but I just wanted to make sure I understood when
Yeah.
they were all expiring.
Everybody's would be expiring at the same time.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah, the whole program would be over, and
The other piece of information is when would the $1,500 be due and payable?
30 days.
Immediately, I would
30
imagine.
days, yeah, ASAP, 30 days.
Within 30 days, within 15 days?
Are we doing a group motion here?
I'm just saying, I'm trying to clarify the motion for the meeting.
I'm within 30 days.
Within
It's the
30
motion,
days.
it's part of my motion.
So let's restate the motion. The motion is,
That we extend for these 2 particular properties owners, their rights to water and wastewater and water in the other case until the end of 2013 for $1,500 per equivalent 5/8 meter, due and payable within 30 days.
And then there was a second is needed. Second.
Time for more discussion.
any more discussion? Yeah, absolutely.
I would,
Go for it.
because of the risk to our credibility as an organization, I would strongly consider you to vote against this. We will never be able to set a date with the developing community again on any program I ever believed.
Oh, I think that's a matter of opinion, Rich. I disagree.
Yeah, I think I disagree too. This is such a special situation all around. We're not changing the code at this point.
No, but the special situation was, it wasn't convenient when the thing was due, but it's convenient now, so please let me do it late. That
You're
is,
paying an extra $500 for doing it late and getting a shorter period of time.
all right, call the ball.
I'll call the question.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I called the question.
Sir?
I would just like to add one thing. What we'll need to do with Mr. Nelson's assistance is take a look at this, as what we were looking for was conceptual approval. We may need to draft an actual resolution, because the original program was put in place with a resolution. If your motion is a conceptual one, we'll draft that motion
Let's do
accordingly, bring that back, probably for consent calendar or formal action at your next board meeting.
Let's do that then.
That's
Yeah.
just procedurally where we'll head from there. I'm not changing the motion.
So we'll have them draft up a conceptual. So that would be the conceptual.
Right.
So restate the motion with the conceptual.
Right. I think that's understood. I think
Yeah.
the staff report.
Okay,
Sort of identified.
so we need to vote on that for the staff to conceptually come up.
No, we'll draft a resolution in accordance with this motion. It will be on the next board agenda for your formal action.
Okay.
Now that we know.
So do we need to vote?
Now that we know.
Yes.
Yes.
You do.
Okay, let's all vote. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
All opposed? One. Okay. All right, we're done.
Don't do this again. Set up a tickler file, okay? This is very painful.
All right, on to item number 9D, approved budget increase to fixed base meter reading project, CIP 12-W015, and increased water replacement fund expenditure limit.
President Benson, members of the board, the item you have before you for consideration is a request regarding the fixed meter reading project. This project is to upgrade the current drive-by meter system that we have to a fixed-based meter system. The project is currently included in the 2012-13 two-year CIP budget. Customer Service Supervisor Vicki Goldman, who's in the audience, initiated a formal solicitation process as required by the district purchasing policy. The process is a competitive proposal process in which cost is only one component. Other considerations are reliability, compatibility with other systems, user interface, and data analytical capabilities. All the vendor proposals received exceeded the estimated budget. The recommended vendor, who is Census, is near the median of the cost proposals. Final cost negotiations are still underway. The project was originally planned to take 2 to 3 years, but the current district's vendor is no longer supplying component parts for the system. Therefore, the project must be completed in a shorter period of time, over the next 6 to 9 months, so as not to have any disruption of revenue from billing for water. So staff is requesting a budget increase for the fixed meter project from $1,915,000 to $2,095,000 for the 2012-13 two-year CIP budget. In addition, staff requests that the water replacement fund limit be increased from $5.08 million to $6.9 million for fiscal year 2012 and 13. This will allow the work to be completed over the next 6 to 9 months before the current inventory of parts of the old system is depleted. Ms. Goldman is also available should there be any detailed questions about the project or the timelines. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that I may.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
I'd like to find out from the Finance Committee why they didn't give us a recommendation.
Because this thing has been baked pretty well, and we've sent it to the full board. There's no reason, we weren't going to add any value talking about it. This is something that
We just chose to
is
move
well
forward.
settled, and I'm sure the full board would
Like to discuss it.
like to discuss.
And the system, how old is the system, the Datamatic system?
About 9 years old.
So this is to change the budget, it doesn't award a contract, correct?
Correct.
Still go through all that.
And from our perspective as managers, I'd remind you that this system is the cash register of the district.
Right.
And given the current vendor is not performing well, not for us, but financially for them, and is phasing out of the business, we're really running into a situation where we don't have the spare parts or the service capabilities we need to maintain the system going forward. That's perhaps the why now question. This project always was in the CIP. We always knew we needed to replace the technology. It's 9-year-old technology. We want to go to the next generation, and now seems to be the time to do it because the financial problems the current vendor has had.
Didn't we do this with a grant before?
Pardon?
This part, did this, what, the initial system, wasn't that a grant? No? Okay. Only you guys get grants. Yeah, I got a grant for that one. Oh, yeah, yes, we do.
Is the significantly a large increase of the reflection of a different scope, a different supplier?
It was an estimate. Dave can answer that perhaps a little bit better than Vicki, but I believe it was an estimate that was prepared several years ago, and when we actually got into the solicitation process with the contractors or vendors in this case, this was the price for the vendor that we determined to be the most qualified.
Is this equipment, it's better, I mean, it's more technologically better?
It's the next generation. Rather than drive-by meter reading, you know, we used to go out and read meters and write them in a book. Gotten well past that. Now we're to the technology we're using. You drive slowly down the street, pick it up. This is a mesh-based system. I think Vicki can explain this a little bit better, and it actually talks to a central base. That data is telecommuted into our office. We can look at consumption real time, consumption with customers. You know, it really is the next. It'll eliminate the time of our staff. You know, drive. Now there'll always be a few meters that'll go bad, and we'll have to do some field work. This is the next generation of meter technology here that we're doing, and pretty well proven. Vicki believes it is. She did a extensive.
Census, right?
Yeah. Who's using it?
Why don't you step up to with the microphone, Vicki? Why don't you step up to the podium?
You asked who's using it. Census is the vendor of choice through this process, and they actually have about 48% of the market. And they're one of the largest. They're also our current meter vendor. So we've, over the years, have gotten very comfortable using Census meters, and that eliminated the compatibility issue that we were concerned with some other systems.
These are kind of like a data pack that goes on top of the meter.
We have transmitters in every box right now. These transmitters, instead of speaking to the antenna on top of a truck, will speak to a tower. There will be 3 tower-based antennas, and they will all be located on our own properties. So they won't be in anybody's way or eye line or anything else. One of the unique aspects of this system as well is that it has they own their own bandwidth. So we won't have the interference issues that we can have with other systems. And that's unique in the industry. They also provide us with the ability to use multi-port or single-port transmitters, so that if I have multiple meters in a box, I can attach 2 meters to one system instead of having 2 or 3 systems in a box. It's really about data analytics, though. So this system will give us the ability to, as Bert said, provide real-time data analysis to our customers. We won't have to go out any longer. Right now, we have to go out to the meter box, hook the component up to the transmitter, and cross our fingers that it'll download the data and give us 30 days or so of data. This will give us ongoing historical data analytics for operations as well as for our customers.
Well, our customers, go ahead.
And so will it extend, I know currently we have some commercial customers on technology, kind of like, will it extend the real-time leak detection to everybody then, basically?
Yes.
Which is a major benefit.
Yeah.
I haven't had a leak once, and DSRSD found it before I did, but it took a cycle.
It can take 60 days for us to see it now. Yeah.
Well, is there software so that customers can actually look? I mean, we've had customers where I work that they can actually log on.
Right. I know that East Bay Mud is actually testing one of the systems we looked at, and they did not like the customer component of that system, so they contracted with another organization, a third party, to develop some software that they're testing right now. The customer portal aspect of this system that'll be done after we get the infrastructure installed, and that will be through a third party. There are some companies out there who, for very little money, do a great job with the customer component, where the chosen manufacturer, their customer portal is, I don't find it really that customer friendly. it's really expensive, so I don't think that's an expensive option. But the customers, through this process, they will end up with a portal that they'll be able to go in and look at their entire history from the day that we start reading it, of course, going forward, and compare that to the rainfall, the peak season, and really see their consumption requests.
Okay, excellent.
The action tonight is just a budget adjustment, right?
Right. Okay, so
Not spend any money?
Tonight?
Yeah.
No, it sounds like a great idea. I mean, it's leading edge, but not leading edge, as Dave would say. So, yeah, I think it sounds good to me.
So do you hear a motion?
Move for approval.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Pat seconded.
Whichever way.
Is that all right? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, so on we go. Last one of the evening, accept item 9E, accept the capital improvement program 10-year plan for fiscal years ending 2014 through 2023. Mr.
President,
Rico.
members of the board, we have in front of you the 10-year CIP capital improvement plan for acceptance. Plan acceptance does not authorize the expenditure of any money or the approval of any project. All it simply is that the board concurs that staff has put together a financial plan that looks like it really represents where we think the district's going in the next 10 years. However, I would note that the first 2 years of the 2-year CIP budget that you will see in a few months will look a lot like the first 2 years of the 10-year plan with some minor tweaks. I'd like to make a couple comments, just a few quick things about projects. There's a couple projects in regional expansion I noted because eventually we'll be in front of our annual committee with the city of Pleasanton and they'll probably come up. But we'll be initiating in the next 2 years as reflected in this plan, biosolids treatment plant master planning. We're concerned about now that our B2E process along. It's been 10 years since we looked at biosolids issue. We need to update that. We also want to make sure the treatment plant that we're making proper planning in the future for potential changing regulations as it relates to nutrients and everything, so we don't build ourselves into a corner with some decisions. And the other one that you may recall on stage 4 expansion, because the budget reaches, we cut out some facilities that decrease the wet weather capacity. We're at the point now where on peak wet weather days, the treatment plant has to equalize in order to get all the plant, meaning taking raw sewage and put it in a holding basin. Right now, cool weather for a day's operation, no big deal, but pretty soon it will get to the point where it's several days it begins to generate odor problems, so it's time to do some bigger pipelines. So those will be kicking off in regional expansion. In water expansion, we're proposing getting started on the water master plan. I might note that both the treatment plant master plan and the water master plan will now take a look at connection fees as part of the project, so that those are tied closer together, so we need to address that. And a little bit of that reason for the master plan is this project up here we noted earlier about some zone 1 storage. We need to revisit that with this timing and everything that's going on to update that, as well as we're getting to the point now as the system matures, this master plan will look at. It always looked at expansion, but it will shift into also looking at the operation of the system as it gets closer to build out, residence time, water quality issues, those kind of things. So that'll be a starting project. We have a Zone 2 Reservoir 20B. That's we're getting short of power storage in Zone 2 on the side. So we have a 2 reservoir to start off. And also there's several CIP projects for recycled water into the Camp Parks, Santa Rosa Jail, FIC area, that if we get the grant funding comes along, we'll be moving along those. There's a couple changes in this 10-year plan I'd like to point out for you. Steve Delights in the audience and Herman Chen in the finance department made some significant improvements. If I could direct your attention to page 15 as an example, you will see, if you look at page 15, you will see a cash flow projection of regional sewer expansion. What we did is you see the thin blue line and the thin green line. For making projections of future DUEs, the first 3 years is usually pretty good, working with the developers, the cities, people pay a lot of attention to it. Beyond that, it becomes less problematic. So what we've done is the blue line is our estimate. What we did is said, what happens if we only get 60% of those fees? And that's the green line. And of course, we've moved projects out 2 years in order to reflect that we only get 60%. But what we're trying to look at is the sensitivity and the what ifs come along, so we get into thinking a little bit. All the funds in the 10-year projection look good. The one that's maybe the closest to being a little concerned as we look out is water expansion. If you look on page 20, which is right after 19, you'll see in the 60% scenario, it kind of goes downhill. But I would caution, in that projection of 60% is the 1C reservoirs, is zone 1 that's reflected in the project up on the screen. Obviously, if connection fees are going that slow, that means this project's behind. That means we can probably push that reservoir out further, so we're not. So overall, based on what we see as planning and the fund balances, we look in good shape. We added one more thing of interest, I think, if you flip the page to what would be page 19, 21, 22. You'll see it again. What we did is ask ourselves, okay, given the cash flow and the fund balances, can we pay, well, is there any chance of paying off bonds early? And so that's what this next series of graphs is about. The first time we looked at this, because now we have some major debt. And the answer is, if projections come in like we projected, and projects go as we planned, the answer is yes, we will be able to begin paying bonds off earlier than the life of the bond. So, you know, at this point in time, we're not there yet because there's some restrictions of being able to start paying some bonds and other things, but we're looking at that in the future.
Right.
So in the next go around 2 years from now, that'll become a real potential policy option for the board to begin paying some bonds. So with that, those are kind of the changes. Like I said, the fund balances look good. Most of what you see is no real new projects have popped up over the time. It's really just reordering them now with what looks like the new growth rate, given where we are today in development.
Any questions?
Well, I'd like to make a comment on what Dave mentioned about the two graphs. There's one for regional expansion, one for water expansion, the two funds that have the majority of our debt. And I happen to be looking at 24 and 25 just because I think it's a little clearer picture the way it's presented, which is the water expansion debt. As you know, back in 2011, we spent a significant amount of time and effort restructuring our water debt. We successfully did that. It's 30-year debt that runs out for a while. Now there's indentures and things associated telling us when we can pay it off. But we will be financially in a place to be able to pay that debt off in 2022-23, basically 10 or 11 years after we borrow the money rather than the 30-year lifetime of the debt. So, you know, there's a lot of assumptions built into that, but basically it's saying we're in a position to be able to start seriously looking at being debt-free within a reasonable period of time here. And that the same graph is, the same pattern is on the regional expansion fund, although that graph's a little more complicated, so it's harder to see.
These are all fixed rate debts, and so when that time comes, we can look at what we're paying versus the current. And we may decide, we don't want that.
That's right. That's right. This is just assuming you're going to pay it off. You need to make a business decision as you go forward.
Sure.
Oh, very good.
Very good. Finance committee's happy, and technical committees are happy.
Yep. So, okay. Thank you very much. Good job. Next.
It's your first 10-year plan. Good morning. I was expecting some interesting questions.
After he absorbs it, it's still
This is
illuminating.
That's why it's 3-hole punch for our convenience. This one was so
That's what picked up those page numbers, the missing page numbers during the hole punch. I don't know, the agenda item calls for a motion. I don't
Yep.
Oh.
To accept. We need to accept.
We need to accept. Okay, so do I hear a motion?
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Good job, Dave.
Yeah, good job. Good job. And crew. Thank you. All right, so now we're on to board member items. Before we go into closed session, we'll start with Mr. Pat.
I don't believe I have anything. I think I'll make that we'll see you all tomorrow at the employee event.
Yes.
Nothing, so I found this to be a very enjoyable meeting. I like, sometimes some of our stuff becomes really pro forma. I find it both interesting and exhilarating to have some stuff to actually discuss at the board level. So, thank you all for that.
Controversy.
Makes him happy. He was running numbers, and I'm like,
answer-
I've already done
And
mine.
the answer to Georgine's question from before, another kind of and we'll get more of this when we do strategic planning, but kind of a thought I'm having with these, I want to do business, is to try to drive more things up to the board level. I think, we're all very capable and things in the community doesn't add a ton of value for two people looking at it, and I sure look forward to having all five of us go and haggle it out and just
Well, but
my 2 cents.
I wouldn't want anybody to ever think that they, just because it's on consent or discussed by a committee, that they couldn't discuss it at the board level if they so chose.
I think we have a question real quick before we move on to you.
I apologize, I didn't realize Jim Alate came in. Every time Bert wanted to tweak something in the 10-year plan, they did it on her desk. She did all the paperwork, all the things.
Thank you, Jim.
I order more than one drink.
Are you? Yeah, you better buy her well tomorrow. Buy her drink. All right, well, Director Von Heater-Leopold?
No, but wouldn't you know it that tomorrow is also the volunteer reception for the city of Dublin? So we go from the employee recognition to the volunteer reception. That's all I have.
And Director Duarte?
Well, the board kindly authorized my travel to Washington DC next month. Next week, as you know, I'll be traveling to the Redora. We'll be attending one day of the CASA conference, and I will be introducing Congressman Swalwell to the membership.
Okay.
So that should be interesting. I've met him before, but looking forward to that. And then we have an intense agenda of lobbying to look for on Wednesday and Thursday. So I hope to bring back some positive results.
Happy holidays and bring back some cash.
Yeah, right.
And also, I did turn in my written report on my training session at CASA in Monterey.
Good. And I'd like to acknowledge everybody for their assistance tonight. I really appreciate staff, and especially with the running some numbers for us with the charter properties issue. So I appreciate you guys all. I'm glad I brought that back for some good discussion. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow at the employee recognition. Should be a lot of fun. And we are adjourned. Oh, we are now into closed session.
Nancy, I think it's fair for the viewing audience that might be viewing. We don't anticipate any report out for the closed session, so the broadcasting will be terminated. If anybody's interested in a report out, they can contact you at their leisure. Hey, Dave. Hey.
Yeah.